It's last-minute preparations for restaurants opening their doors for dining tomorrow after many months in lockdown. It's been over 3 months since they closed. Eateries will, however, have to follow strict safety measures. For more now, we're joined by our reporter Heidi Giokos via Skype. Heidi, thanks for joining us. The regulations are out for what restaurants can and can't do starting from tomorrow, and it's quite a long list. I've been trying to wrap my brains around how it will affect how they do their business and what the dining experience will be like. What will this new norm be for those sitting in a restaurant and indeed those providing the service?
Exactly, Marcel. I think it's going to be a very big change for many daring enough to actually go to a restaurant as of Monday. We know the regulations allow for restaurants to operate from Monday, sit down, that is. So we do know that the basic rules apply in terms of you have to register before you go into a restaurant. So you have to give all your details, you have to check your temperature, and you have to make sure that you wear a mask or something covering your nose and your mouth at all times. But when you're eating, you can take it off. The restaurant, however, is allowed to say whether or not you're allowed in, perhaps if you're not wearing a mask or if they suspect that your temperature might be too high or that you're showing some kind of symptom. And there is, of course, a lot of distancing that will need to happen in the restaurant. So it's not going to be table next to table, but the restaurants have to make sure that they provide enough social distancing and physical distancing. And it's, of course, going to be very different in terms of you're not going to have a menu that you can touch and turn and page through. They want to make sure that it's that goes away with, because, of course, they want to avoid you touching things as much as possible and everybody else touching it. So it's going to be very different. I'm actually quite interested to walk into a restaurant and see what it's going to look like on Monday.
I'm always very impressed by waiting staff who can rattle off a whole list of specials just off the top of their head. So those are going to be the staff, I think, who is going to be taking the lead in that regard in terms of the no-touch menus. But, of course, lots of talk, as per usual in South Africa, about the fact that you will not be able to consume alcohol while at a restaurant. What have you heard on the ground? How much of an impact is that going to have on the dining experience?
So we do know that a number of restaurants have actually raised this concern to say that, for example, if you're going to a casino and you want to have a meal at a casino, it goes hand in hand with having a drink. So many people are saying that this is going to really impact their business, because some people might not want to go out and have something to eat because they know that they can't have a glass of wine or a beer to enjoy with their meals. So we have spoken to a number of restaurants, and they've indicated to us that they are concerned what financial impact this is going to have, because it's not like they can bring their own bottle of wine or they can bring their own beer. It's not allowed. And of course, this is government just trying perhaps to avoid, as many people as possible going to a restaurant, and they have their own reasons as to why they're not allowing this. But government is just saying for now, no alcohol is allowed to be sold at when you go to restaurants and sit down to have a meal.
I was speaking yesterday to one of the restaurant associations, and they said, look, instead of having a normal cab sav with a good steak, you're just going to have perhaps a chocolate milkshake or something like that. So that certainly is going to change the palate out there. And now there are, of course, some restaurants who have decided that this is not going to make sense for them financially to open under these strict regulations come Monday. What have we heard from these restaurants who have decided to rather wait it out?
Yes, exactly. We've actually spoken to a number of restaurants that have said there's one specific restaurant that's saying that they're only going to open up in September. And we'll actually speak to them a little later on to get more clarity as to why exactly this is happening. But many are saying that it just doesn't make financial sense to do so. And even though government is trying to open up the economy in stages, under level 3, they're allowing sit in restaurants and casinos and theatres and cinemas, at the capacity in which they're allowed to operate does not make financial sense for them. And this is why they've decided to say, in actual fact, perhaps we should not open until we're allowed to open at full capacity. So if you aren't allowed to have more than 50 people in your restaurant, sometimes it just does not make financial sense to allow or to rather open it up, because you don't know how many people are going to end up coming in. And also, Marcel, I did a story a couple of weeks ago when we were doing the impact of what the lockdown is doing to businesses, how many people are losing their jobs. And we know that some restaurants have just completely shut down. They are not going to even reopen under level 3 or when we eventually get to level 1, because the financial impact has been so severe, and they just don't have the means to keep going. So it's quite devastating to see, but hopefully there are some restaurants out there that can still function under these strict rules and regulations.
Yeah, indeed. I think many of us who have favorite restaurants in various parts of South Africa have been very sad when that social media notice comes up to see one of your favorites has decided to close their doors for goods. So many can just hope that they will eventually get back on their feet at some time and reopen their businesses in some way, shape or form. Thank you so much, Heidi Giokos, bringing us the very latest on the restaurant industry and how they're preparing to get back into business in some way from tomorrow.